Hello and welcome to the tutorial for Excel Basics. Excel is a spreadsheet program. The reason it's called a spreadsheet is because it's spread out into many rows and many columns. With other programs such as Word, you're pretty much confined to the size of the page. But with spreadsheets like Excel, you can have formulas and charts and functions spread throughout your columns and rows. So let's just look at the Excel screen and learn some of the basic vocabulary associated with Excel. First of all, at the very top is our title bar. Similar to Word, this will say Book 2 or Book 1 until we save it as something else and give it a name. On our far upper left, we have our quick access toolbar, and once again, you can customize that by clicking the black drop down and putting a check mark next to the item. Upper right corner, you have your minimize, restore, and close for the entire Excel program, meaning that if I minimize, the entire program minimizes here to the taskbar. If I close, it's going to close the program. Right underneath that, you have another set of the same tools. This will minimize just the current worksheet. So notice Excel stays open. Down here in the corner is that worksheet, and I can maximize that back. Just the same, if I wanted to close just the worksheet I'm working on, I would click this lower X. I get a gray screen, but Excel's still open. And then from there, I can just say File New, Blank Workbook, and it will open up. Okay, we have our ribbon similar to Word. Some of the tools will look familiar, some of them are specific just to Excel. But as you click on different tabs, your ribbon changes. Down in the bottom right-hand corner is our zoom. Depending on what you're working on in Excel will depend on how big or how small you want that to appear on your screen. So those are the things that are similar to Word. Now let's talk about things that are just unique to Excel. First of all, you have your name box here. Right now it says cell A1 because A1 is my active cell. As I click in different places on my spreadsheet, my name box changes. This here is my function button, and when I click that FX, this gives me a list of different functions. We won't do one right now, so we'll cancel that. Then this is my formula bar. So as I'm building formulas, which sometimes contain functions and sometimes will just contain mathematic operators and numbers, as I'm building those, they will show here in my formula bar. Okay, Excel is divided up into columns and rows. So alphabetical across on your columns and numerical on your rows. As you scroll to the right using your scroll bar, you come to the end of the alphabet. It just starts over again, but with 2 letters. Also, as I scroll down with my rows, they go for a very long time. Now, some of my students, especially my younger ones, like to play around with Excel and find out how far the numbers and rows go, which is not a very good idea. Let me show you why. So if I decide to scroll clear down as far as I possibly can, and maybe I'm going way over, teacher's talking and I'm bored in class, so I just hold my mouse down, go for a really long time. Okay, I'm not to the end of my Excel spreadsheet, but I'm pretty far. If I end up clicking on one of these cells and even hit like a space bar, that activates all of those cells before that active cell. So if I want to go in and do a print preview, notice here, this is page 1 of 72, and it's just blank pages. So if I hit Control Home and go back up to cell A1 and have my assignment and go to print it, here's page 1 with what I need, but here's 71 more pages of blank. And when you do that, you waste paper and you tie up the printer. So please, please do not try to find the end of the spreadsheet. It will only cause pain and suffering. If you're really curious as to how many columns and how many rows are on Excel, you can just come up here and click and hold this, and then up in your name box it will tell you 1,000,000 something rows and 16,000 columns. Okay. So we have rows and columns. This cell is called my active cell. When I'm going to select an area of cells, I need to make sure that my mouse looks like a white plus. You're going to get some different mouse pointers as you work with Excel. As I point to the edge of this range, I get a four-headed arrow. That will move that data. This little black square in the bottom right hand corner is my fill handle, which we'll be using to copy formulas and functions. As I hover over that, my mouse pointer is a solid black cross. So it's important that you remember how to select your data and what your mouse pointer needs to look like. I'm going to use my fill handle to just put some data in. So sometimes students will go to select and end up like this and end up moving their data around. You need to really make sure that when you're selecting it's a solid white plus. We'll be learning the fill handle a little later. That's the solid black plus, and then the four-headed arrow will actually move your data. Okay. When I select a group of cells like this, it's called a range. So this range would be stated as B1 to E11. Up here where my alphabetical headers are for my columns, these are called column headers. If I select my column using a column header, it selects all the way down to the bottom of those 1,000,000 something rows. If I select one of my row headers, that's going to select all the way across to my 16,000 something columns. Sometimes you want to select all the way across, sometimes you don't. So be aware that when you're selecting like this, you are selecting all the way across or all the way down the spreadsheet. Okay, once again, and I think this is on your quiz, if you end up out in space somewhere and you need to get back to cell A1, you just hold down the control key on your keyboard and you tap the home key, which is located above your arrow keys. Down here at the very bottom, I see sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. Some students get confused and think these are separate files, but they're not. I might have some numerical data on sheet 1 and a graph on sheet 2 and a table on sheet 3, but they're all part of the workbook called Book 3. You can add more sheets by just right-clicking and choosing Insert, Worksheet. You can double-click and change the names to whatever you want. You can also right-click and change your tab colors on these if you want to distinguish them from each other a little bit. Okay, let's talk about entering data. So I'm going to enter the names of my family members. If I type my name and hit enter, it's going to automatically move me down to cell A2. And each time I hit enter at the end of that text, it moves me down. That's one way to enter data if you're going through columns. Now, if for some reason I wanted that data to go across, I would hit my tab key in between each name. And depending on what your assignment's calling for, you may need to enter horizontally or vertically. Usually when you're entering some kind of title or column header, you're going to enter using your tab. Now I'm going to enter some numbers in my B column here. I'll put in some ages. Now you'll know exactly how old I am. And then down here, I'm going to put in some functions. So I'm going to enter a function that will give me the total of all the ages, the average, the highest, the lowest, and that's good. Okay, so my total, whenever I want to enter a function, I need to make my active cell the cell where I want the answer to appear. For total, or for adding, there's a really slick feature called the Autosum, which is on your home ribbon up here to the right. And when you click it once, it's going to put what we call marching ants around your numbers, and then the formula down here below. So every function or formula is going to start with the equal sign. The function is sum, and then the range is B1 to B5. And notice that the range is separated by a colon. So the first cell in the range, a colon, and then the last cell in the range. Excel always displays this first to make sure that it's guessing correctly. Is this the list of numbers that you really do want to add? And yes, these are the numbers we want to add. So we can either hit our enter key or we can click Autosum again. And then that will give us our total. Now notice our formula bar, as we click on these regular cells that we typed in the information, it just appears normal looking. But when we click on this cell where we entered our function, it does not contain the number 138. It contains the function that we used. All right, now we need to do an average. So I can click on my insert function. I don't have a quick tool for average, so I'm going to click here, and I want to do an average. So I select the function from the drop-down list, and then similar with our Autosum, it's giving me a range, and it's asking, do you want to average B1 through B6? And in this case, Excel isn't guessing correctly. I don't want to include this total in my average. So I can do this a couple of ways. I'm going to go ahead and just change this to a 5 and then click OK. Another quick way to figure your average is to click on your destination cell, or the cell where you want that formula to appear, type equals, and just start typing the word average. Once you see it, you just double click, and it has the parentheses here. It's ready for you to tell it the range. Then you can just drag down, get the marching ants around where you want. If you slip, if you include that last number by mistake, you can point here to the corner where you get a two-headed arrow and drag it back up. Once you have your range correct, you hit enter and you have your average. Highest and lowest are computed with functions called max and min. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in equals max. As soon as it appears, I can double click it, and then once again it's ready for me to define my range. So I'm just going to start at the top and drag down. And then my last one is minimum, or min, equals min. Double click and define my range. Now the power of Excel is it automatically updates. So let's say I have a birthday. I just change the number here, and then all of my functions or formulas automatically recalculate because the function hasn't changed, only the data feeding into it has changed. And that's part of what makes Excel so powerful, is you can get your functions in there and then you can manipulate numbers to do different things. All right, let's talk about the difference between a function and a formula. Sometimes I use those two terms interchangeably, but there is a difference. Our functions are built-in math operators that Excel does, like sum, average, max, min. A formula can sometimes contain functions, but it contains more numbers that you put in yourself. So let's say I want to just calculate the difference between my age and my husband's age. We'll put a little label here. And we'll put our answer down here in cell A13. So basically, I just want to know what is 46 minus 44. And of course, we can all do that in our heads, but we're going to do it with a math formula in Excel. So everything, formula or function, is going to start with an equal sign. And then I'm going to click up on my age. It puts B1 down in my reference. Then the minus sign, which is just the same as the hyphen, and cell B2, which contains my husband's age, and then I enter. So this is a formula. This is a function. One last thing I wanted to show you was how to auto-fit your column widths. So right here, all of my names and labels automatically fit within this width of column A, but this difference between Melanie and Ron, this label here extends beyond column A. That's not a problem unless I want to put something here in cell B12. Then notice that when I click back here, the data is still there, the information's still there appearing on my formula bar, but it's chopping it off, it's hiding so that this new cell can display its information. The easiest way to widen your columns is to point right up between your column headers. Notice you get a two-headed black arrow. Then you just double click and it will automatically widen your column to the longest entry. You can also manually widen by clicking and dragging. Where you see the width, these are character dimensions. So this means 20 characters or 21 characters wide in your average font. If you make something way too wide, you can just double click and it will auto fit that back. Okay, that concludes the overview for Microsoft Excel. This is a really fun unit and you'll learn a lot. Have a great day.